unlike denominators and bring our focus to add fractions with unlike denominators. Alright, so you're going to do your do now, and these are the assignments for this week. You only have 3 assignments. 29th is the last day to submit any assignments that's missing. Alright, let's do a quick review. We have 2 fractions that we want to multiply. Multiplying fractions is usually we do multiply the numerator by the numerator and the denominator by the denominator, and if we can simplify, we simplify, or we just leave it as it is. Looking at these 2 fractions, I see that I cannot simplify anymore, so this would be the final answer. Alright, let's do a quick one for dividing fractions. I'm going to rewrite the problem as 3/1 divided by 5/6. Do the keep change flip and rewrite it again. I wrote a 1 because this is a whole number, so there's a 1, always a 1 below a whole number. Can be written as a fraction like that. Keep change flip, and now I flip, and now I'm going to get 18/5, which will give me 3 3/5. Next slide. Multiplying mixed numbers. First thing I have to do is convert into improper fractions. And how do I do that? I multiply these 2 and add the product to this 3. So 4 times 2 is 8. 8 plus 3 is 11. And that will give me this fraction. Multiply. 3 times 1 is 3. Plus 2 is 5. Now I do the same thing. Multiply as usual. 11 times 5 is 55. 4 times 3 is 12. And I get to simplify. That's going to be 4. And 7/12. I cannot simplify this anymore, so I leave it as it is. That's my final answer. Alright, now we're going to do adding fractions. When you're adding fractions, you can, if the denominators are the same, you can just add the numerators and the denominator would be the same. You do not add the denominators. Do not add the denominators. Alright, let's see a fraction, 2 fractions that has different denominators. Now we see that we have 8 and 3. There's nothing common between them two. So I will have to find a common denominator in order to add these fractions. A common denominator. How do I find a common denominator? The easiest step is multiply both denominators. So I'm going to multiply 3 times 8. I'm going to get 24. And now this, I wrote it like this because I have 2 fractions and I'm going to add these. I'm finding a common denominator and multiplying. So these 2 fractions are being written as equivalent fractions. What does this mean? This means that 8 has been multiplied by 3 and written as 24. So I have to do whatever I did on top, to the bottom, I have to do it on top, and multiply this by 3. Now this 15/24 is equivalent to 5/8. Alright, let's do the other fraction. This was multiplied by 8, so I have to multiply the top by 8. So 8 times 3 is 24, 8 times 1 is 8. Now this fraction is equivalent to this, which means if I simplify the larger fraction, the larger looking fraction, the 8 and 24, I would get 1/3. Alright, so I have to add these two. Now I have like denominators. So first step is get a common denominator. Second step is add the numerators. So 15 plus 8, that's 23, and 24, I'm not adding the denominators, only the numerators. And that's the final answer because it doesn't simplify anymore. I'll leave it as it is. Let's do a quick subtraction problem to see if it's the same rule. If my fractions are the same, my denominators are the same, I can do one thing. Leave the denominator as it is. 7 minus 2 is 5, and that's the final answer. Like denominators, you don't have to do anything, just subtract the numerators. Now, if it's a different denominator, then I have to do the same thing as before. I have to find a common denominator. So when you're adding and subtracting, you have to do this special case of finding a common denominator. What is my easiest way to find a common denominator? You multiply these two. So I have 55 and 55, two fractions. Subtract. So do the same thing as before. I multiply this by 11, multiply this by 11. It helps to write this down so you know what you're multiplying with. 55, 33, multiply this by 5, multiply this by 5. It's going to be 55 and 10. Now, same denominator, I can subtract. What am I subtracting? The numerators. So what will I get? 55 remains the same, nothing happens to the denominator. 33 minus 10 is 23, and that's the final answer. I just want to highlight something. This fraction is equivalent to this fraction, and this fraction is equivalent to this fraction. We're just creating like equivalent fractions to find a common denominator. Alright, let's get down to a summary. So this is the summary. If I have to add fractions at the top, if the denominators are the same, like denominators, so I'm going to add the word denominator here in a red color, like denominators. Add the top, leave the bottom. That's two things. Unlike denominators, convert bottom into the same common denominator. At the top, leave bottom the same. If it's mixed, you have to do improper fractions. And easiest part to remember is the adding, adding and subtraction are similar because you have to convert into the same denominator. If you don't have to convert, you just add or subtract. Multiply and divide fractions, you multiply the top, you multiply the bottom. If it's a mixed number, you convert. Let me change the color. With division, that's one extra step that you have to do, and that is keep, change, flip. Keep, change, flip, convert into improper, and then keep, change, flip. Alright, so that's it for today's lesson. Let's do a quick review. Let's add a slide. Now this is your problem. You're going to solve this problem. I'm actually going to give you two problems. Problem 1, problem 2. Problem 1 is asking me to do 3/4 add to 1/12, and the second problem is 5/7 add to 2/3. Alright, so those are the two problems that you have to do. See you in class.